The minute many of people from the immigrant class, they do something constructive, they go out of their way to distance themselves from us. So if they go get a PhD, well, I'm a Nigerian American, man. I'm the first Nigerian American with a PhD. All right, I mean, good for you, brother. If they win a track meet or whatever, oh, the first Ghanaian American, they go out of their way. This woman who's the spokesperson at the White House, they made a big deal about it. Well, she's the first Haitian American. She's Haitian. She's a Haitian American. They go out of their way when it's constructive. When a motherfucker rob a liquor store and he's Haitian or he's black, if somebody go rapes 18 women, oh, he's Nigerian, but he's black. He's black.
So whose fault is that, though? It's not.
That's theirs and the white people too. That's theirs and the white people too.
I would say it's white media.
Yeah, and them. They do that shit too.
Well, they do it when it's to affirm some success.
Yeah. No, but you black when you want to dump your trash on us. You see what I'm saying? I don't want nobody's fucking trash. I don't want nobody's trash. If we're gonna be different when it's positive, be different when it's negative. Don't just be black when it's negative, and then we get the stigma for it.
B1 family, welcome to Blacklogic. There's been a lot of states, I won't necessarily say a lot, I don't think there's been no more over than 10 states that have essentially established a commission or a task force to study for reparations. But before we cover that, I'm gonna kind of mix things up today. We're gonna get into it maybe about 10 to 12 minutes within it. It's a couple of things I wanna just cover here for you guys. Now, this is coming out of the New York Mayor's office. And if you guys are not familiar with a meeting that reporters were asking Mayor Adams of New York about the migrant crisis, and I'm just going to read this very quickly for you guys. We had 2 teens stabbed in Grand Central yesterday. I raised that to talk about subway crime, transit crime in general, but you have an update on that, it would be appreciated. Now, we know the stance of Mayor Adams on immigrants. He was very open and honest of accepting immigrants. They are a sanctuary city. And now that's starting to collapse on his first initial statements in support of this, because he then goes on to state, you have these hard-fought gains on crime that you outline at the top. How sustainable do you think they are amidst the backdrop of this continued onslaught of migrants that's costing money? Cancel police classes. So the bottom line, how sustainable are these crime gains that you identify as your top priority heading into 2024? Then Mayor Adams responded, well, I think your question is so important because when I talk about the devastation of impact of migrant and asylum seekers, people only think about the volume of people that are coming in. There are byproducts to the cutting services, like we had to postpone the police class, looking at some of the budgetary cuts having a body of people, many young who can't work. And then he goes on to say some other bootlicking shit, but who really cares what he's referring to? But the point is, he's basically labeling the illegal immigrants that they have opened, they kind of opened the floodgates in New York of of helping them rent out apartments and giving them monthly stipends. They're fast tracked to work, work visas, etc. All sorts of things are being rolled out for the migrants. Now he's stating, I know that those 2 teens that were stabbed in Grand Central Station were essentially migrant stabbings, illegal migrants that are here in New York. He didn't, of course, they keep saying migrants, but illegal aliens that are in the country. So this persistent issue of the undermining of Black communities by the way of migrants, because essentially when we look at all the video clips, there are very, very few of white people coming out and stating, hey, we have an immigrant crisis, unless they're Republican, right? Unless they're quote unquote part of the red states. But again, the red states like Texas and Florida are flying and shipping and busing all of the illegal immigrants and migrants to these different quote unquote sanctuary cities and states, okay? Now, my brother Nas down here stated, it is not our responsibility to give illegal aliens a job or something to do. Allowing these illegal criminals in our country to commit more crime is anti-American citizen. We have to get the open border politicians out of the office ASAP. And if you look like me, smell like me, probably minus the smell, you will understand that this is going to mostly affect, once again, Black Americans. I know there's people out there, why is everything black? Why everything black, 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 black this? Not only from our history, but just for the natural hatred of other folk towards Black people because of the color caste system, because of the system of white supremacy, your usual suspects, family. But people would tend to downtrot a lot of these perspectives and narratives because they know it's true. But if they downtrot them, then they would think that, oh, a lot of these things are just conjured up, they're liberal, they're this, they're that. Where most of these things, unfortunately, are anti-Black, okay? So I want you to also take a gander, listen in on this one as well. Let me see your thoughts on it.
Fuck cleans this.
Something just hit me.
Shoot.
Are you mixed race?
No.
Or you a bunny hopper?
Yes. Per your hold.
That's why you have a liberal
that's
perspective.
Not true. That's not
because you go home
that's
to a
not
white
true.
woman.
Yes, but that's not true. I felt this way before I met my white girlfriend.
So help me understand how you could be so passionate about the black.
I'm passionate. I'm an objective thinker. I don't. If something makes sense.
So you have no loyalty to the black community.
No, I do have. I probably employ more blacks than you.
Okay. So help me understand that you employ more blacks than me, but you go home to a white woman. Why you don't have a black woman?
Because I fell in love with a white woman, not a black.
Why didn't you fall in love with a black
woman?
woman?
I fell in love with a black woman. We broke up.
Okay. And why didn't you fall in love with another black woman?
I did that too. We broke up.
Okay. And why didn't you get another one and another one and another one until you found the right one?
Because I met a white woman that I fell in love with, and that's the person that
and you're being disingenuous about
That's not
something.
true.
And let me tell you what you're being disingenuous about.
True.
Romance is a function of focus and opportunity. If I want to date an Asian, I'm going to put myself around Asian women so I can find one. If I want to date a Latino, I'm going to put myself around Latino women so I can date one. If you wanted to marry a black woman, you would have put yourself around black women so you can find one. So how did you end up with the Caucasian? No disrespect to her.
No, not at all. What I'm telling you is the places that I go socially are not just monolithic.
So what? I went to a white college, white job. I never bunny hopped.
Listen to my question. Let me answer you. That wasn't my priority. My priority wasn't, yo, I'm not closed off to dating Latino women. I'm not closed off to dating Asian women. I'm not closed off to dating white women. So again, in my search for romance, all of those things were on the table.
But you do understand that by not being with a black woman, you undermine the success of the black community.
That's your opinion.
That's my opinion. Then tell me how the black community benefits from you having a white woman.
If I lend to the financial uplifting of that community, one, that's one thing. Two, if I'm helping to educate the people in that particular community, that's a benefit.
Does not your white woman benefit more from your economics than any black person?
Yeah, probably.
Exactly.
So why can't they both be mutually beneficial?
You want to know why? Because she belongs to the group that is responsible for the historical oppression of your race.
So
why would you voluntarily go over and marry into that? Because when you marry the woman, you don't just marry the woman or date the woman. You're dating her community and her culture. And given the history of us and them, why would you dare align yourself with that if you care about us?
Let me ask you a question. I want you to let me get my answers out.
Go ahead.
So hypothetically.
Yeah, family. Dr. Umar Johnson, I don't think anyone should debate him on interracial dating. He will tear you an asshole. Regardless of your thoughts on it, I just like the way the guy speaks when he talk about interracial dating and bunny hopping. I necessarily prefer a black woman myself. Again, we're going to mix things up today, family. Before we really get into the heart of the topic, we're going to mix things up. There's a couple of things, video clips I saw on, was it Twitter X or X Twitter? I don't know, that I really found really insightful that I wanted to share with you guys here. Here's another one. I want you guys, and hopefully I don't get in trouble because I'm not trying to be anti-Semitic. I am just literally showing a video clip on YouTube. Let's check it out. Yes, I should have gave you guys a warning about that video. Very grotesque. Someone's just resharing a video of they quote unquote shown the flag of the Star of David, and they put Zionists basically defaming a dead Palestinian's body. Okay. Again, I'm mixing it up here before we get into it, but let's get into it. New York set up a commission to consider reparations for slavery. Now, this is again a do-nothing tactic by Democrats in order to get the Black people's vote. The issue of reparations for historically disadvantaged groups, we've heard it all before, okay? I want you guys to think about the states who have done this tactic, this strategy in order to get Black folk out to vote for them. So California started this back in 2020, where they established a task force to study and develop reparation proposals for Black Americans. Now, the task force have been making some headways of making it lineage-based, and we're gonna get into the details of the California Assembly Bill 3121. We're going to get into that because I think we should break that down, because other states are now using this strategy, but not in the same regards. Because New York, quite recently, as you see here, which has been the second state to pass legislation creating a commission to study reparations for descendants of slavery. Okay. The commission will hold public hearings and issue a report by June 2025. Okay, so that again, that's prolonging it another 2 years down there. Then, of course, Maryland in this year as well established a working group on reparations for Black Americans to study the feasibility they stated, and the potential scope of reparations. Now we understand that some states have taken, or some cities have taken preliminary steps, like, Evanston in Illinois. They kind of approved some form of reparations for people who were discriminated against through redlining practices, or nowadays gentrification. New Jersey, they actually issued a preliminary report back in 2022 recommending further study and dialogue on reparation options. Then Virginia of this year, they established a commission to study and recommend reparations proposals for descendants of Black American slaves in 2023. This is utterly important, family, because the only thing that these bootlicks and the puppets of the white dominant society, they're standing around as if this is reparations. They're smiling and grinning, thinking that this is reparations. No, this is once again a do-nothing legislation that they probably burned down 1,000 trees, that is not going to bring anything tangible, anything of substance to Black Americans who are the survivors of their ancestors who were victims of this country. See, a lot of times when we have these discussions, I think a lot of times people who are doing financially well, who are intelligent, who are stable, Black folk, they would then repeat the same white supremacist talking points as if the foundation of our culture, the foundation of our lineage started off in this country, in shackles and chains. And then from that moment on, you had these systems that the government allowed and sometimes even approved to really stop and cut off the growth of Black Americans being prosperous in the home of the free. But no one wants to talk about that. Everyone says, oh, well, reparations should go to those who were victims, not the survivors, not their descendants. And then we bring in a lot, we bring in very tangible proof, family, that we can say, what about Jewish Holocaust survivors who are not only receiving reparations from Germany, but have received reparations in America as well? And not only the survivors of the Holocaust, but their descendants as well. Now, the biggest group of them all that we can mirror the quote unquote organizations and treaties are Native Americans. There's no Native Americans today that were being genocide, as well their land taken from hundreds of years ago. None of them are around today. The people who are receiving the reparations from the American government are their descendants. So don't let anyone trick you in stating that, oh, well, reparations should go to the victims. The question is, no other group in America has been through what Black Americans have been through. And look at the state of Black America. They do these very racial tropes of the reason of why the conditions that we are in. Oh, you know what? Because you guys have a low learning level. You're not intelligent. You have very low IQs. They use that racial trope. You guys are just not that smart. That's why you're doing bad. That's why you're doing bad. You're just not as skillful, informative, charismatic as other groups of people. That's why you guys are not doing well. You guys are criminals. You're criminal by nature. We done a study and we noticed that majority of Black American men suffer from outrage. Anytime they get upset or emotional, they want to fight and kill people. But you know what, family? No one trickles down the reasons why we are the way we are. We're the most hated group in the entire world, but focusing on our own problems here, we're the most hated group in America. It doesn't matter if illegals will come across the border or not. They still look at Black people like the scum of the earth. And where did they get that from? Where is this hatred of the descendants of non-Black people? Where are they getting this hate from? Where are they getting this, this disdain and these stereotypical racial tropes that had them to discriminate upon us? Where did they get that from? Since slavery was such a long time ago, since Reconstruction was such a long time ago, since Jim Crow was such a long time ago, where are they getting it from? Oh, they're getting it from us. I digress, family. We can talk about that all damn day. In New York, we think we're on the right side of this. Slavery was a product of the South, the Confederacy. A Democrat said at the bill signing ceremony in New York City, what is hard to embrace is that the fact that our state also flourished from slavery is not a beautiful story, but indeed the truth. Who the hell are they fooling, family? What are they talking about? So slavery occurred. You know the atrocities. You know the tragedies. You know the murder, death, kill. You know the stolen. You know all of these things. As you stated, you said, what is hard to embrace is the fact that our state also flourished from slavery. You knew that your state flourished from slavery. Free labor. That's why America is the most powerful country in the world, thanks to Black folk. Thanks for the hundreds of years of free labor that put them above everybody. And she's stating it right here. She's stating it right here, that our state also flourished from slavery. So what the hell is this? This is a direct contradiction of the statement that the governor of New York made. This white lady right here. This is bullshit, family. Let me tell you why. The proof is right here in the title of this article. New York will set up a commission to consider. Now, I want you to think about the word consider, and I want you to think about we had to embrace this hardship is the fact that our state also flourished from slavery. So why are you considering reparation if you know that you knew that your state has flourished from slavery? That's my problem. That's my problem right here. You know that your state flourished from slavery, but you're signing into law considerations for reparations. Don't let these liberals, don't let these conservatives, don't let these Democrats, don't let these Republicans, do not let these politicians fool you. They are so unintelligent. It's just mind-blowing. And they put this information out publicly, and they will contradict themselves within the first 2 or 3 minutes. And the reason why they know they can get away with it is because they know that you're not reading the truth. They were telling them own selves. It's almost like an ongoing joke. We're going to post all of these articles, all of this news, and black people still won't know what hit them. That's what they're banking on. Not on my watch. Not on my watch. And then in the same breath, this same lady does this. New York governor vetoes bill that will make it easier for people to challenge their conviction. The same New York governor who's doing a study on reparations. The same New York governor that's doing created a commission to study reparation and had a bunch of black men around her. Y'all remember her, right? Here she go. There she is. So she can consider reparation, even though she knew the state flourished off of slavery, we still got to consider it. You know, we got a bunch of illegal immigrants. We got crime. We got overpopulation in New York. So even though we know that the money is owed to you, because as I stated before, that New York has flourished because of slavery, there's some things we still need to consider, even though I'm the governor and I can probably get this thing going with an executive order just like that. Same breath, she states, hey, I'm going to veto bills that will make it easier for people to challenge their conviction. Because when people are convicted of a crime that they didn't commit, I would rather them stay in jail so we don't have to use the detective and police investigation resources to have them be exonerated, even though they're innocent. I would hate to do that. I would hate to spend more funds to free innocent people. Now, when I think about the people, the race of people, rather, who have been mostly exonerated in this country, who do I think about? What does the statistics show? Black Americans are 7 times more likely than white Americans to be falsely convicted of serious crimes. And this is coming from the Equal Justice Initiative. Black Americans are 7 times more likely than white Americans to be falsely convicted of serious crimes for homicides. The National Registry of Exoneration found the risk of a wrongful conviction in cases where the victim was white is nearly twice of the cases where the victim was black. So we have these very large disparities of wrongly convicted black folk who've been the most exonerated group in America. And you think that you're a friend of black folk because you signed a study? That you're considering it? See, and anytime people who operate in the system of white supremacy, what they do is they throw the rock, show you one hand and hide the other. Like, oh, I didn't do it. Because on one hand, she has these black bootlets here, all smiling and grinning that she's doing something great for black folk, and she's not. Then turns around and signs legislation like this. She signs legislation like this. This is the problem I have, where this is simply the truth. You know this, I know this. But wait, there's more.
I want to dive in deeper. As we saw earlier, reparations is a hugely divisive issue. A Pew Research poll taken in late 2021 found that by a more than 2-to-1 margin, Americans oppose reparations for African Americans. And look at the racial split. Whites overwhelmingly oppose reparations, 80%. But the numbers are almost exactly reversed among African Americans who strongly support the idea. So joining me now is Cornell William Brooks. He's a professor of the practice.
I really got to point this out too. They actually did a study. And on that study, one of the questions were, if giving Black Americans reparation didn't raise taxes, do you support it? And they still said no.
Leadership and social justice at the Harvard Kennedy School. He's also a former president and CEO of the NAACP. And Coleman Hughes is a columnist and host of the Society and Culture podcast, Conversations with Coleman. Both of you have agreed to essentially lightly debate this issue with me, as playing my role of moderator here. So, Cornell Brooks, let me start with you. You've been studying this for quite some time, and you've been working with some religious leaders to come up, I think it's fair to say, a modern blueprint of what you think. What would reparations look like in the 21st century? Make the case.
That's right. So I've had the pleasure and honor of working with both the National Council of Churches and the Union of Reform Judaism and a group of Harvard Kennedy School students who are working with these large religious associations all across the country, representing over 40 million people, to create a moral discourse on reparations. Why? Because we know that in many corners of our republic, it's being politically weaponized. And they're endeavoring to make, I'd say, three key points here. The first of which is, with respect to reparations, you often hear that the harm was too long ago, it's too expensive, and too impossible, too difficult to do. What we find is the harm was not long ago, right? So in other words, yes, slavery ended in 1863 and 1865, but the convict leasing system, representing 1 million people enslaved, lasted up until the opening days of World War II, right? And all of these systems of oppression continue into the present, point one. Point two, with respect to reparations being too difficult. I want to know something here, Chuck, that's critically important. My colleague, Linda Bilmes, who's a public economist at the Harvard Kennedy School, we've done a study, and we looked at all of these programs across the federal government, and we make the case that we're already doing reparations. We simply don't call it that. So in other words, there's a norm in government which essentially says, if an American has been harmed through no fault of their own, the government will often step in to try to make them whole. We do this not only with respect to Japanese Americans who were interned after World War II.
Exactly.
We also do it with respect to veterans, with respect to people who suffered in a natural disaster. We do it with respect to children who've been harmed by vaccines. We do it with respect to pensions that are insured. So we do this over and over again, which says that we can do it. And lastly, we do it at the level of millions, billions, even trillions of dollars. So we can't afford to do it.
All right,
Absolutely, we
can.
can.
Bring you in here. You testified before Congress in 2019 against the idea of reparations. You said,
this is how coons look.
The descendants of slavery would, quote, only divide the
Chief
country further.
bootlick in charge.
You thought it would insult Black Americans by putting a price on the suffering as well, and would make Black Americans like yourself victims without their consent. I hope I captured that correctly, but you take it further. Make your case against.
So let me just make a distinction off the bat. I support reparations for redlining, right? Because there are many victims of redlining that are still with us. They're still alive. And Cornell, all the examples of successful reparations for...
Okay, even before this guy starts, family, he just, I saw this earlier when I was researching this. This guy's a fool. He's a straight idiot because the only thing he's considered reparations for are people who have been redlined, okay? But no one, and here's the thing, the previous gentleman who's, pro-reparations is basically stating that the original sin of this nation, a system built on cruelty and dehumanization, ripping families apart, stealing lives, and poisoning the well of American society, it didn't magically disappear when slavery ended. Jim Crow reared his ugly head. Laws woven from hate designed to keep Black folks down, trapped in a cycle of poverty and oppression. Reconstruction, a flicker of hope, quickly choked out by violence and systematic barriers. So when we fast forward what this bootlick is talking about, redlining, redlining was a financial chokehold denying Black families access to wealth-building opportunities. But what happened to all of the people who were hung and killed and burned and raped? Families ripped apart. See, everyone talks about The start of financial stability is having a nucleus family, right? Building a powerhouse of economics. But if you do not have a family and your family has been torn apart, how can you ever be financially stable? If this country is built off originally, was built off traditions of men went to work, women took care of the house and the kids. So if you took the men by mass incarceration and you left the women to fence for themselves, who are taking care of the kids? Who are taking care of the kids? So redlining is just not one of those things. Then came the fires, the Red Summer of 1919, where they bombed majority of the major cities where Black folk were living in, specifically Black areas. Cities burning, and not just from neglect, but the anger of the white community and those naval men that came back from the war. What about the drowning and flooding of Black cities and towns? Oh, what about in the shadows? Another insidious threat, the CIA, allegedly, that funneled cocaine into Black neighborhoods, fueling a drug epidemic that ripped families apart and killed thousands, hundreds of thousands of Black people, and demonized and degraded and declined the entire Black community. What are we talking about, bootlicks? Mass incarceration, the prison industrial complex, swallowing whole generation of our men, turning lives into profit, using Black men in jail because, again, according to the Constitution, there's still slavery allowed in America. Imprisonment is a form of slavery. It's in the Constitution. They said that slavery is now abolished except when you become imprisoned, meaning you have no control over your body. They can tell you whatever they want to, and you have to do it or fear bodily harm. Look up the Constitution and prove me wrong. We're survivors of the victims of our descendants. We've built families and communities and cultures that shine brighter than any burning cross that a KKK will put in a yard. We've pushed through discrimination. We smashed through glasses and ceilings to fight every lazy trope and so-called biased IQ test thrown our way. I remember I was in a, where was I? I was in a Clubhouse chat and they were talking about Black inventions versus white inventions. And they were going down, oh, well, Black people made, the refrigerator trucks and potato chips and da-da-da-da-da. And they knew, but they didn't talk about blood transfusion. They didn't talk about a version of the stoplight. They didn't talk about the gas mask. They didn't talk about the color monitor with Mark Dean. They didn't talk about all the technological things. Now, look, white men, they did this and white people did that. And I said, well, did you know? Because they talking about that, white people invented airplanes. And I'm like, well, no, a Black man invented airplanes. They said, what? I said, when you look at it, the patent, I forgot the gentleman's name, look this up. The patent was approved for the first flying, airplane or airship. When the guy was going to the fair, I forgot what state this was. When the guy was going to the fair, he was shipping his airplane to show beyond the world. He already had the patent approved. His airplane never made it to the fair. His airplane never made it to the fair. And then came the Wright brothers. Now, all of these things were kind of happened within a year or so, but the Black man's patent was already approved prior to the Wright brothers even flying, let alone building a plane. See, don't let no one teach you your history. Again, we talk about how Texas and some other states are ripping out Black history, right? And they're talking about, oh no, we're just ripping out the slavery part. No, you're not. No, you're not. Who designed DC? Benjamin Banneker and Frederick Douglass. Who came up with the Farmer's Almanac? Benjamin Banneker. So when we look at all the achievements in technology and math and science, Vivian Thomas came out with a procedure to cure the blue baby syndrome. So when we talk about all the wonderful and great things that we have done, And then they tell us we're not intelligent. This, again, another racial trope. And when you have people like Coleman Hughes, bootlicking #1, talking about the only thing I believe is those who've suffered and went through redlining, because some of those people are here today, those are the ones who get reparations. And then again, I pose the question, those people who may oppose reparations, who are sitting on the fence of reparation, is name your group in America who have been through what our people have been through, and then tell me the conditions that we're in. The Native Americans, they're getting repaired each and every year, and we're going to go over it.
That you highlighted were examples of reparations given to directly the victims of these human rights abuses in their lifetimes or their immediate family members. That's why I support reparations for redlining paid directly to the victims, as they're doing in Evanston outside of Chicago. I make a distinction between that and reparations for slavery, which ended in 1865. I know of no examples where groups are getting reparations for historical crimes that are over 150 years old.
Native Americans?
And, unfortunately, the opportunity was tragically missed to pay it to the slaves themselves or their immediate families. But claims like this time out, right? And this is timed out. And let me say one more thing. Martin Luther King had a plan for addressing the legacy of slavery, which he laid out in his book, Why We Can't Wait. And he called it the Bill of Rights for the Disadvantaged. The Bill of Rights for the Disadvantaged was not a race-based policy. It was a class-based anti-poverty program that would benefit the black poor and the white poor and the poor of all races.
First of all, this guy is not well studied. He is not well researched. The one thing he's reluctant to say is after that, Dr. King pointed out all the funding and all the resources and support that were going to white immigrants that was coming over from Europe. He stated, and you guys seen this clip on this channel before and many other channels as well as Twitter, TikTok, whatever, is Martin Luther King stated, we're going to Washington to get our check. I know you guys remember that. So what the hell is he talking about? That's the one thing he's missing. That's the one thing that he purposely has left out.
Support in terms of addressing the legacy of slavery. That's what I feel is the wisest path forward for this country.
Let me follow up a little bit, Coleman, because it is interesting that there are some forms of specific areas where you believe a reparation of sorts should be put there. How do you distinguish Jim Crow? And what is the right amount of time? And I say that Germany is still paying reparations to now descendants of Holocaust victims. So what is the timeline where you feel like where you would draw the line?
So I think reasonable people can disagree on this, and I don't claim to have the last word on the subject, but I think we can all agree reparations should be paid ideally in the lifetime of the victim. If the victim dies, it should be paid to their spouse or to their children. Once you get to grandchildren and beyond, my personal view is that that's beyond my line. But like I said, reasonable people can disagree on this, but there's no doubt that, in my view, crimes from the 1850s,
I don't know if I can even listen to the rest of this guy, because the one thing that he's failing to mention, we understand in America, if wealth is trickled down, then what do you think poverty comes from? Poverty is also passed down. So if you destroy everything that black people have built, and we always have to start off from scratch, we will never have the same wealth. We will never have the same assets of other classes. I really want you guys to think about that. I really want you to think about that, because when I look at it, I want you to look at every other group, whether it be Asians, Hispanics, whites. And anytime that black people so-called pulled themselves up by their bootstraps, coming out of slavery, making a way for themselves, they had literally government legislation so they couldn't be beggars or vagrant or out on the anything to lock them back up so they can be in chains. Because again, they understand the Constitution. And even to this day, we have many examples, many, not this Tulsa, Oklahoma with the bombing. That happened in 1921. But what about the Red Summer of 1919, where majority of the black meccas, the majority of the black business districts, majority of the black Wall Streets, prominent black cities and towns where we had our own clinics, our own hospitals, our own dentists, our own schools, our own grocery stores, our own corner stores, etc. We had our own. So when I hear black bootlicks like him and other people on the internet, off the internet, who are just not knowledgeable of their own history so you can understand the dynamic and construct of why we are in the conditions that we are in, I'm just telling you to shut the fuck up. Just shut up. Just shut up. If you're not going to be for the betterment of your people, just shut up. Because here's the thing. We can talk about black culture and how it's now declining because of hip hop and the fight over hip hop with other immigrant groups. We can talk about all of those things that hip hop is now making black culture look degenerating. Or I've heard some people say this. What is black culture? Black culture is is the decline of black people. No, it is not. No, it is not. A people is not only defined by their music. They're not only defined by their music. So let's think about music in general as an example. I really want to cover this because there's a contrast here. So hip hop, yeah, very degenerating music, talking bad about women and killing each other and using the N-word repeatedly, all sorts of degenerate behavior. Yeah, a lot of that is in hip hop today. But what about when hip hop first came out? It was music of revolutionaries. It was music of empowerment. Those things has changed. Okay, let's move to another music genre. Rock and roll, Chuck Berry. Who invented rock and roll? Not white folk, black folk. So is rock and roll degenerate? Okay, country. Who invented country? Who invented the blues? Who invented funk music? So when we look about culture, it's not simply based upon one music genre that people so-called just want to fit inside their narratives. Okay, what about our food? Some people will make the argument that soul food is horribly bad when it comes to health. Okay, and it is, but we have to think about where our food comes from. It comes from people in slavery during that time making meals out of the scraps that the slave master will allow them to get. That is where soul food is from. But nobody wants to talk about the intelligence. Nobody wants to talk about the technical capabilities of Black Americans. Nobody wants to talk about the skill. Nobody wants to talk about the inventions. Nobody wants to talk about the procedures and the progression of our people and the things that we've done to better the country. Marion Van Brown created the home security system. So when you think about Blink, when you think about the Ring, when you think about anything with a camera and or an alarm system, this system made this back in New York years ago. Okay, so when we're thinking about technology, when we think about intelligence, you should be thinking about Black Americans and not bootlicks like him.
Are beyond the statute of limitations.
Do you see this where services can sort of be what is reparations? So maybe it is free college, maybe it's discounted college, maybe it is tax breaks, however you want to describe it.
Cash payments only.
Acceptable form in your opinion?
Well, and some other stuff.
And when we look at what we call repertory compensation programs in government, they use a variety of strategies to help make people whole. But let's go to this point about indirect victims. When we look at the policies, when we look at government, when we look at history, we actually do compensate people who have suffered a harm indirectly and their heirs. Think about this. So in Tulsa, Oklahoma, right, Black Wall Street was bombed from the air. Homes were burned on the ground. No compensation, including for victims who are over 100 years old today. But when we bombed islands in the South Pacific, as in the U.S. government, we paid compensation to direct victims, indirect victims, and their heirs as a consequence of an American government bombing people on the ground. The point being here is when you look at repertory compensation programs, what you find is the variety of direct and indirect victims who are compensated for nearly every group but Black people.
I want to play a clip from Ronald Reagan.
Yeah,
after he signed the bill.
this guy's well studied, and that's why I like very polite, very intelligently countered everything that guy was stating of reparations already being paid out to groups and their heirs even to this day. And the biggest thing, because we're going to get into it, we're going to skip right past our last part around Ronald Reagan. We're going to get into it, family. California is the first state to tackle reparations for Black residents. It says tackle because they haven't paid anything as of yet. Okay, they got all this task force that they built up. What are reparations? Okay, 5 components of reparations: restitution, compensation, rehabilitation, satisfaction, guarantees of non-repetition. Okay, no, it's not going to happen again. Let me tell you something: slavery is not going to happen again. Not with Black folk, not for Black Americans. Not for Black people in America. Not Black Americans. Not foundational Black American. Not U.S. freedmen. Slavery will not happen again. I'm gonna tell you right now. It's either gonna be a lot of. I'm trying to censor myself on YouTube, man. Let's put it this way: it's going to be a lot of people laying down. Let me just say that either it's going to be us or them, but there's going to be a lot of people laying down, not moving. Let me just say that slavery will not happen again, not to us. Compensation: this should be provided for any economically accessible damage, loss of earnings, loss of property, loss of economic opportunities, more damages. Okay, 5 components of reparations. What California came out in 2020. Was there slavery in California? Because again, a lot of people have argued this. A lot of people have argued this. It says yes. While California did not have large-scale plantations like the southern states, slavery existed in various forms during California's early history. California was not legally a slave state, but you don't have to be legally to be doing something illegal and inhumane. But again, yet more than 2,000 enslaved people were brought to the state from 1850 to 1860, typically by plantation owners to work in gold mines. According to the task force, state and local government officials also at times upheld fugitive slave laws. They upheld fugitive slave laws. What we're talking about. So you was from a so-called slave state and you ran away and you got into California. So California was not a slave state on the books, but as you stated, they had slaves, but they also upheld fugitive slave laws. So people who were bounty hunters or park police, if you know about that history, or the park police or the slave patrol came to your state looking for these slaves because they know they went that way, California would help them catch them. So yeah, California has slavery. That's why they talk about reparations. And it states here, a closer look at the California's Reparation Task Force. I'm breaking this down because first and foremost, I believe that every state should have a reparations task force or a U.S. Freedmen Bureau, right? Every state, and then there needs to be a federal commission, just like the Bureau of Indian Affairs. There needs to be a Bureau of Freedmen Affairs, whatever, however you want to name it. But it needs to be on a federal level as well as a state level, okay? And they're kind of breaking down the construction of the task force, okay? These people here. One strange picture on here, one strange picture. There's one strange picture. Nope. Not Dr. Scott. No. Not Camilla Moore, not council member, but Donald K. Tamaki on a reparations task force for Black Americans. Interesting. Okay. I think his father was Black. I don't know. I'm saying it for a friend. Okay. Reparations will be eligible for California reparations. 2.8 million people identify as Black in California, and 92.6 are native born. Okay. Able to trace the lineage to a person enslaved in the U.S. or to Black American U.S. prior to the 1900s. So again, this is lineage based, not race based. And some people may argue that because the slaves in America were Black. So it's essentially race-based, but it depends upon your lineage, okay? Do your ancestors date back to slavery prior to 1900? That is what they're getting at right here. Now, it says, to descendants of free and enslaved Black people who were in the United States prior to 1900, the reparations panel narrowly rejected a proposal to include recent immigrants. This is the kind of the controversy behind Black people from the Caribbean, Black people from the UK, Black people from Africa coming over and getting to the reparations conversations and also getting to the reparations claim that belongs to Black Americans whose lineage stems from the slave fields of this country. So you always have people trying to put their hand in the cookie jar. It states that the task force also voted to recommend the legislator create a California American Freedmen's Affairs Agency. So this is kind of like the first state has been kind of doing, quote unquote, some very big things. But again, there's been nothing tangible. There has been no payouts. It's just a bunch of talk and formulating and suggesting and studying and considering and proposals. It's just a bunch of words that don't mean anything. I'm going to pay you this amount on this day. Let me move on. Where would the money come from? I am so tired of this argument. Pegged at $350,000 per person is the best indicator of the impact of racism. It goes down to say Black Americans endured and estimated Black Californians could be owed more than $800 billion totaling for decades of over policing, disproportionate incarceration, home seizures, and house discrimination. You know what, family? You know what I realized? There's been so much hatred and discrimination and bias. I can't even recall majority of the shit that has been done to our people to continue to undermine us so we can never, as a people, be prominent or be on the same level or above levels. Think where we would be without all of this shit that's happened to our people, right? No, we already know what happened in slavery, all the raping and killing and you name it, Black men fighting each other for sport forcibly. There's not enough words to explain what our people have been through. And again, they think that if wealth trickles down and transcended through generations, what do you think poverty is? And then again, the guy was speaking, he got me riled up, family, because it's just a bunch of bullshit that people say to say, you know what, I'm on the side of the white supremacists. I'm on the side of the Black folk who got up and did something with their lives. The question is, why a majority of Black people in the conditions they are in? Did they choose to be in that condition? Like, you know what? I'm just going to wait here and be the criminal class and be a Black mark on society. No, we had tremendous amounts of help. So you see a couple of Black people doing well. Now, this is what I want you guys to do. This is what I want you guys to do. All the Black people who are prominent inside your head, who are doing financially well. Now I want you to take away, I want you to delete, I want you to not consider entertainers and athletes. And entertainers mean actors and actresses, anybody who's entertainment, comedians, you name it. Entertainers and athletes. Take those Black people away. Take those Black people away. Singers, comedians, whatever, the Black circus, take those people away of these so-called Black people who are doing well. Now I want you to think about business moguls. I want you to think about inventors. Where are they at? See, well, a lot of times people don't understand in this system that we live in, believe it or not, certain people are helped, assisted, and supported, while other people are sabotaged. Yeah. We're going to, we don't mind you guys being entertained. We know a couple of you guys are going to get it rich, but we're going to have a great time, right? And we're going to even laugh at you at the parties you come to. Ain't going to be that many of you there, okay? And just for example, and I'm not calling out anybody in a degenerative or divisive way, you take Dave Chappelle and Kevin Hart. Yeah, we'll let you guys come on in, just a couple of you guys. You take in the football and the basketball, okay, and the baseball, wherever these so-called prominent black people based upon a certain skill, a certain entertainment and or sport. You take them away, where are the prominent black people? Why are majority of black people in the conditions they are in? But nobody else shares the same history as us. We like to say these viral statements. Make that make sense. Make that make sense. Then they're talking about, you know what, we're going to pay reparations by generating resources for marijuana. No. Because here's the thing, that's kind of a double-edged sword. First and foremost, they're majority of, they're basically stating, and again, I'm leading here. This is my conjecture, I'm leading. Majority of black people smoke weed. So if we do a recreational marijuana tax, black people are just gonna be paying themselves. We know in California, everybody's smoking weed, but they're like, yeah, all 2.8 million of those black people smoking weed. So we do a recreational marijuana tax. We do a couple of installments by diverting from the state budget, and we get some super fund money from wealthy donors. We can pay you guys reparations, but you're gonna pay a third of it by them weed taxes. That's what I got from that. I know. Again, that was my conjecture. That's what I got from it. Okay. And here's some other things too, family, to point out. Others who have been paid reparations now. Indian claims, we're going to go over that, 818 million. Holocaust survivors, okay? And we know that was over in Germany, but don't forget, Barack Obama gave reparations, as well as Joe Biden, reparations to Jewish Americans, people who settled here, okay? And giving and providing medical coverage for the Black Tuskegee experiment with syphilis is not reparations. Japanese Americans, Black community of Rosewood, again, that money did not go to them. I helped rebuild the town that you still got to pay for, you still got to rent, okay? But yeah, the story goes on and on and on. But let me show you a perfect, I won't say a perfect one. I'll say a good example. I'll say a good example of reparations. I'll give you a good example of reparations that we can probably get on board with, with some negotiating that people in this country are already receiving. Now, this group of people, okay, have been genocide. This group of people have had their land stolen. But what we share in common is this. We have had our land stolen even to this day, and we have been genocide as well. So I'm not going to get into what makes this group different, what makes this group better, because then you'll get into the whole Dane Calloway argument of we're Black Native Americans, we're just American Indians, and we already been here. Yeah, some of us been here. Some of us came on slave ships. Some people don't believe that perspective. That's okay. We're going to get into a whole bunch of other stuff. But when it comes to it, they have the Bureau of Indian Affairs that was established back in 1775. And then, pretty much made whole and was formally adopted in 1947. And it stated here for almost 200 years, beginning with treaty agreements negotiated by the United States and tribes in the 18th and 19th centuries through the General Allotment Act of 1887. Okay? And the General Allotment Act, family, was basically the Dawes Act, if you guys are not familiar with that. A law that divided Native American reservation land into parcels and distributed them to individual tribal members. The act was intended to assimilate Native American tribes by breaking up their communal and land ownership and encouraging the development of individually owned Native American farms. And it basically goes on to say that it basically destroyed the Native American community. Okay, that's what it goes on to say, that it destroyed the Native American community by doing so. At the bottom, it says that the Dawes Act weakened the social structure of tribe, many nomadic Native Americans were unable to adjust to an agricultural existence. Others were swindled out of their property. Between 1887 and 1934, Native Americans conceded control about 100 million acres of land. Now, we already know about Special Field Order 15 and the amount of land that Black Americans were promised, but we never received. Let alone, we're still seeing documentaries, we're seeing articles and journals of all the land that's still been stolen. I think there's a special on Amazon Prime about a family land that they've been fighting for 20, people even went to jail over it for 20 years of their life, just so they can get their land. So we got the same claims to fame when it comes to the atrocity that this government has done and allowed by other groups and state governments. There's been a lot. And here's another thing, right? The whole reparation and get off your ass, you lazy niggas, that whole conversation. I love it. Because no one else has the smoke for Native Americans. No one else has the smoke for Jewish Holocaust survivors in America and their descendants and heirs. No one has it. That they're still paying reparation to the heirs of Holocaust survivors. No one has the smoke. No one brings up the argument. No one brings up the federal land that Native Americans does not pay taxes, but they receive money, a $1 billion budget each and every year. No one talks about it. No one talks about it, but no one wants to bring up the past. But the past is very important because the past is why the future exists. Think about that. The past is why the future exists. This is not about making excuses for Black people not doing financially well, for Black violence. The source and the truth is just what it is. But you're not going to have us to eradicate, to erase, to forget. We're going to teach our kids this information. We're going to have them to understand the construct and dynamic of race and what the role it has played in this country. Oh, no. And then we're going to show how you do other people, how you repaired other people. Senate passes large investment in Native programs in history, more than $31 billion heading to Native communities. But family, this is not just a one-time stipend. This has been going on for 150 years. This has been going on for 100 years or so. It's been going on for a very long time. Because Native Americans receive a yearly budget. And by the way, I'm not hating. They deserve everything they're getting and more. But so do we too. So do we, if not more. Okay? But I love to show this because people don't have any smoke for this. No one has an argument. No one brings up valid points. No one. Not on my Twitter, not on my TikTok, not on my Instagram, not on my Facebook, and not in my YouTube comments. No one ever brings up valid points when I give them compare and contrast, whether it be Jewish or Native Americans. No one. This is what they get. Yeah. This is what they get, family. They get $31.2 billion. They get $20 billion to help them through the COVID crisis. They get $6 billion for healthcare systems and services. So we have all these disparities in Black healthcare. Majority of Black babies are being lost at childbirth. Black women are having miscarriages because of disparities and discrimination in healthcare. In every sector and industry of America have some sort of bias and discrimination against Black folk. Where'd that come from? They just there to get some help. $20 million set aside for the Papa Oluka and the Native American healthcare system. $1.2 billion for Hood, Tribal, and Native Hawaiian housing programs. Wow. $1 billion plus for Native families. How are they getting this money? Child care programs and support. Tribal tab guarantee provide assistance for families. What else? And some people are like, you guys get welfare. You guys get Section 8. Okay. What about Native communities' critical economic and infrastructure investments? $600 million. $600 million. $100 million for critical infrastructure projects in Native communities. What about that? What about $20 million for potable water delivery? What about that? That's the one I want to know about, family. What about the $20 million for potable water delivery? Because last time I checked, crumbling pipes, tainted water plague in Black communities. That's where I'm at. We're still having places, okay, where these towns are having issues with contaminated water. It states here, Troy Lowe, age 4, sleeps under the arm of his father. Troy Lowe in Milwaukee. Troy tested positive for lead poisoning after ingesting the tap water in their home. After ingesting the tap water in their home, and they still talking to us that Flint, Michigan, and Milwaukee, that their water is good. No, it is not. No, it is not. We're still having the disparity of today. This is what we're going through, family. So let's confront the demons of discrimination and bias. Whether it be from the IQ myth, the tool that used to perpetuate, stereotypes that Black people are dumb. But we need to tear these walls down. We need to really confine and define the Black potential, not necessarily proving ourselves to nobody. But intelligence has no color. And then the racial lazy trope. It's not a lack of effort, but it's about hurdles. It's not about the lack of effort. It's about the hurdles deliberately placed in our path. We have to redefine success on our terms and break free from the change of false narratives that they continue to speak over and over and over again. Let me move on. Yeah, there's a lot to cover here. $20 million to mitigate the impact of COVID-19 on native languages. So you're giving $20 million COVID-19 of the impact of native languages. So the COVID-19, I'm really trying to figure that one out. Maybe I need to read the legislation a little bit more, but are you giving $20 million for people who had COVID who speak a native language? Or did COVID change the way they speak to each other? I don't know. I'm just asking questions. Because no one has smoke to speak about all the money that Native Americans get. And this is from the American Rescue Plan. Remember that? None of that rescued any neighborhoods in Black America. The cities and towns that still have contaminated drinking water, but they gave them $20, $30 million so they can have potable water delivery. And we need potable water delivery. And this is not just a state issue. This is a national issue. This is a national issue. That's what we're not talking about. But let's talk about the budget. Oh yeah, we're gonna comb through this, family. Here's the Bureau of Indian Affairs budget. The president's budget request for Indian Affairs programs in fiscal year 2024 is a $4.7 billion increase of $690 million over 23. This includes $3 billion from the BIA, $1.6 billion for the Bureau of Indian Education, and $109 million for the Bureau of Trust Funds Administration. Not only are they continuing to pay this money, but they increased it. This is the annual budget. This is the annual budget that goes to Native Americans each and every year. They increased it. They increased it. They increased it. They said, you know what we're going to do? We're going to give you $717 million for public safety and justice. We're going to make sure that you guys can set up your own police forces. You can have crossing guards, meter maids, everything you need. $717 million. We're going to help you to do operations, investigations, supporting safety and justice programs. That's what we're going to give you the money for. And this is part of your yearly budget. Yeah. Listen to this, the president's budget for the Bureau of Indian Affairs. This is part of your yearly budget. We're going to support families and communities by giving $78 million, which is an increase of $33.5 million. And again, family, I'm not hating about what the Native Americans are getting. But please stop telling Black folk we are not owed reparations, we don't deserve reparations. And who else is getting reparations? For people who was almost genocide, for people whose land was taken. Wait a minute, that happened to us too. Roads, $51.3 million to improve the roads. I wish Black neighborhoods would get that money to improve their roads. We got all the goddamn potholes. Our sidewalks are uneven. Weeds are going through. They don't care about the goddamn Black community. But everybody else, school construction and classroom support. You know how many schools growing up in DC that were better, literally on their last leg? It needs all types of renovation and improvements with plumbing and electricity, all sorts of upgrades and renovations. Did it ever occur? No, we had high schools that shut down. I think McKinney High School has shut down in DC, and I'm pretty sure all the cities throughout America in those Black neighborhoods and those community centers that we used to have shut down or overtaken by the illegal immigrants. But nonetheless, they're getting billions of dollars to renovate and build new schools. Look at this. An increase of $209 million to provide a strong educational foundation for Native children to succeed. Indigenous students face stark inequities in access to education, many of which have highlighted and exacerbated by the pandemic. Then they go on to say about colleges and technical schools and STEM and increase. Look at this, subsidies management. That's what they're talking about. It states that the budget proposed to transfer the functions of the Office of Subsistence Management from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services to the Office of the Assistant Secretary of Indian Affairs, along with a program increase of $2.5 million for the program. The requested increase is directly response to comments received on ways to strengthen the program going forward. Good for them. Good for them. I don't want no Black person, no non-Black person ever give me an argument about reparations. That's telling me that you are an idiot, you are stupid, and you are a fool. Because when we comb down everything that we've been through, which is a laundry list of shit, then you tell me, oh, there's already laws on the books about this particular thing and that particular thing. Well, tell me how these atrocities are still occurring over today. That's what I want. And if it's such a big deal that we can so-called pull ourselves up and make a better lives for ourselves and our family, then why are all these other groups getting help? Why are all these other groups getting support? I broke down in the video all the support and public programs that illegal immigrants are benefiting from at a higher rate than Black folks, statistically. Then we look at other groups in America and how they come to America, how they're receiving resources, funding, and support, not loans, but grants. Reparations for Jewish Holocaust survivors and their descendants. Reparations for Native Americans who are the descendants of those who were genocide and land taken. That occurred to us too. We were genocide. Our land was stolen. Plus all the other thousands of things that I've said and other people have said. Not just redlining, not just gentrification, not just the time of civil rights, not just Reconstruction and what that was supposed to do, not just Jim Crow. But what about free labor for hundreds of years that built the wealth of America? Are we owed for that? Oh, no. We're not owed for that. What about the allowance of the Red Summer of 1919 when they were destroying Black cities? Do we get reparations for that? maybe we don't get reparations for that. Do we get reparations for things that occurred in the other Black Wall Streets as well as Tulsa, Oklahoma? Because there are still survivors of the Tulsa, Oklahoma massacre, and they have yet to receive reparations. So I want someone to tell me, someone's always telling me or telling us why we are not getting reparations, but no one tells us why we should get reparations. I know no one's going to make that argument, right? Because anytime you ask particular white people, they're going to raise taxes. Then when you give them the exact example of reparations and what people are receiving, and guess what? The Native Americans, they're not just receiving money. They're still getting land. They're still receiving land. That's what people are not understanding. The president's 2024 budget proposes mandatory funding totaling $431 million. The 2024 budget proposes to reclassify lease agreement requirements from discretionary to mandatory funding beginning in 24. The budget requests mandatory funding totaling $82 million. Let's say, no, let's stop making this discretionary. Let's make this a mandatory, permanent, restricted thing that will go through. They made it mandatory. Oh, the Native Americans, they're losing their language. So let's give them $34 million so they can revitalize their language. They're losing their languages and they still get money for it. It states here, the tribal native language revitalization program, which are imperative to restore generational continuity and tribal culture, will help to strengthen the tribal sovereignty. They're getting money to speak better in their native tongue. We didn't get that. Land conservation, one of the biggest things here. Tribal Land and Water Conservation Fund, $12 million for the creation of new Tribal Land and Water Conservation Fund land acquisition program, meaning the acquiring of land, buying land. $30.5 million for Indian land consolidation. Sounds like they're going to be buying land from the local farmers who are near reservations. They're going to give them enough money so they can buy out, so they can have more Native American land. An increase of $22.5 million. The land buyback program, they're getting $30 million for it. So please don't tell me, we are not owed reparations, family. The wrongful incarceration of our men and some of our women, especially during mass incarceration. Joe Biden was the Delaware senator who wrote the legislation, and Bill Clinton is the one who passed it. Yeah, I remember black folk talking about that Bill Clinton was the first black president. Get your goddamn dumb ass out of here. This is a white man who was doing white man shit. White people smoke weed. He did that. Men in general have fellatio. He did that. And yeah, there are black jazz players. So he played the saxophone, whatever. That doesn't make him black. A lot of you guys didn't know that he signed that mass incarceration bill. But they're receiving money to buy land. And we're still fighting to retain the meager acres of land that some of our people have today. And all the acres of land that were stolen, people were being killed because of their land, buried right there in their land, and then white people took it over. But they want to talk to us about we're not owed reparations. Lastly, I want to talk about the Freedmen's Bureau. Because a lot of times when people think about the Freedmen's Bureau, they think it was just for black people. It wasn't just for black people. We have to make a solid Black American Freedmen's Bureau. It has to be labeled as such. It has to be named as such, because when you just label it the Freedmen's Bureau, Let me tell you what the federal government doing. Federal government stated the Freedmen's Bureau provided assistance to tens of thousands of formerly enslaved people and impoverished whites. I want you guys to think about that very quickly. It didn't say tens of thousands. It didn't say tens of thousands of enslaved black people, but it also stated impoverished whites. They labeled white people, but they didn't label the enslaved people. That kind of tells me they can kind of group other people inside of this bureau, right? This was not just a Black Americans Freedmen's Bureau. This was an immigrant bureau, as well as an impoverished white bureau. I can't really say that word, can I? But nonetheless, it was for everybody. Immigrants and poor whites. Look at this. Funding limitations and deeply held racist attitudes forced the Bureau to close in 1872. Oh, now you want to say Black Americans. Black Americans were largely abandoned to contend on their own with persistent racial attitudes and discrimination. Many continue to work, listen to this, many continue to work for their former masters as sharecrop or tenant farmers, and a vicious cycle of debt peonage. So basically they worked on the same damn plantations, which we already know. They got freed from slavery, had to come back because the so-called Freedmen Bureau ran out of funding or didn't get funding. And then the poor whites and the other immigrants, they got support from other groups and other legislation where the Black Americans were largely abandoned to contend on their own. Yeah, we're always on our own. You flood our towns and cities, right? You want to make a new highway, you put it right through the Black community. That community degrades itself. We got to go somewhere else and build on our own. We build up these prominent Black cities and towns. You bomb them, you burn them, or you put them underwater. You're destroying them, but you keep building yourself back up, Black folk. We think it's funny. You keep building yourselves back up, and we're going to keep tearing it down. We're going to keep destroying it. We're going to keep burning it. We're going to keep flooding it. We're going to keep sending agents like COINTELPRO to dismantle any Black empowerment movement of any kind. We're going to make other races hate you for mass media and mass entertainment and mass television. We're going to put these racialized tropes and stereotypical things into movies and make Black American men seem gay and Black American women to seem gay. Like, that's only 1% of the population, but we're going to make it 90% of your population. We're going to destroy the Black family. We're going to do all these things to destroy you, just to tell you, you need to build yourself back up. You need to build yourself back up. On March 3rd, 1865, Congress passed an act to establish a Bureau for the Relief of Freedmen and Refugees. Did not just say this was immigrants? So the so-called Freedmen's Bureau was not just for Black folk. Was not just so the enslaved Black people can get the reparations that they were owed or get help and food and shelter and medical services. No, it was for immigrants too and white people. We can't just have nothing for us, but the Bureau of Indian Affairs, the Bureau of Indian Affairs is ran and controlled by Indians, Native Americans. But when it came to the Freedmen's Bureau, unless you dive deep and do your research, you think it was for Black folk only. No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't. It was for immigrants. It was for, as they say here, and land to displaced Southerners. That means poor white people or rich white people. It states a proposed bill established a Bureau of Emancipation within the Department of War to provide protection and support to newly freed Black Americans. To provide protection and support. Where's that now? I want to know, where's all of this now? Nope. That's because this particular bureau was dismantled back in 1864, 1872 time frame. 1862, 1872 time frame. So that was what occurred. Yeah, it states right here that due to funding limitations and deeply held racist attitudes forced the bureau to close in 1872. And by the way, there was no funding limitations. Just say it was racist people that didn't want black people to succeed or have anything because the only way they saw us were as slaves. So yeah, these bootlicking Negroes out here with these, misguided, ass-handed, racial and biased narratives and perspectives about, oh, it's just about this, if you just focus on that. These are stupid, family. I hate to say it. These are freaking idiots. If you're not considering our past, our recent past, and our present, then you're not considering us, whether you're black or non-black altogether. You are a fool if you think that a group of 50 million people, where the majority of them live impoverished, where the majority of them are over-policed, where majority of their fathers were mass incarcerated, that destroyed the nucleus family from the traditional family of the man going out to work and the women taking care of the home and the child. If you don't have a man, then the women go out to work, and who's raising the child? So the children are raising themselves, and you wonder why they're in the streets. You're wondering why they popping and twerking on cop cars and ambulances. You're wondering because there's no one in the house. Everybody got to go work. And the dad is incarcerated or coming from incarcerated, and why he was in jail, why he was in confinement, he lost his fucking mind. He lost his mind. Or he became a criminal in prison. You can't tell me that Black Americans are the criminal class of America, and then on the same hand, you tell me that the most exonerated people who are falsely convicted of a crime is Black American at the same time. You can't tell me that. You can't give me documentaries about Black Americans' land being stolen, Black American towns being burned and bombed, Black Americans' towns being put underwater, Black American towns being redlined, Black American towns being decimated by highways and roads and railways, and then tell me the reason why Black people are poor. You mean to tell me you're going to forget all of this? Well, this generation of the day wasn't that generation of tomorrow. But when we compare that to white families who bought homes and built businesses, and they passed that through their wills and trust, they passed that down to their descendants through wills and trusts. Then they took the equity out of their homes and built the business. They took the equity out of their home and bought another house. And they took the equity out of their homes to improve the education of their children, to improve the medical services in their neighborhoods, that build community centers so they can have technological advances over other people. And you telling me that we are now owed reparations, but we won't consider the past? We won't consider the recent past? And then you misquote Dr. Martin Luther King, because nobody wants to remember one of the very last things he stated before he was assassinated. All the support for the white farmers, all the support for the white businessmen, all the grants. And he got killed right after he stated, we're going to Washington. He was talking about Black Americans. We're going to Washington to get our check. He wasn't talking about immigrants. He wasn't talking about non-Black groups. So when you quote Dr. Martin Luther King, make sure you put that in there too. That's what I want you to do. That's what I want you to do. Thank my moms for moderating today. You guys have a great one.